The Elves and the Shoemaker. A long, long time ago, there lived a shoemaker who fell upon hard times. No matter how hard he worked, he found he could no longer make a good living at his trade. And so, with each passing day, he grew poorer and poorer. At last the day came when he had only enough leather left to make one more pair of shoes. Did he go to sleep? That evening, he carefully cut the leather into pieces and laid the pieces on his work table. Tomorrow will be here soon enough, he thought. I will finish making the shoes tomorrow. In the morning, the shoemaker went to his work table and sat down on his bench. To his surprise, the shoes were already finished. Somebody made the shoes. He could not understand it. He picked up the shoes and examined them closely. They were perfectly made. Every stitch was just where it was supposed to be. I could not have done a better job if I had sewn these shoes myself, he exclaimed. Before long, a wealthy customer came into the shop and saw the shoes. He liked them so much that he bought them at once. He paid far more for them than he would have paid for any ordinary pair of shoes. Now the shoemaker was able to buy enough leather for 2 more pairs of shoes. He cut the leather into pieces and laid the pieces on his work table, as he had done before. Then he went to bed. When he awoke in the morning, he went directly to his table, eager to get to work. But instead of somebody made the shoes. Instead of pieces of leather, he found 2 pairs of shoes, neatly stitched and perfectly finished. Before long, he had sold the shoes and received enough money to buy leather for 4 more pairs. The next morning, he found all 4 pairs of shoes finished on his table. Night after night, the same thing happened. Whatever he cut out in the evening was mysteriously sewn together during the night. Soon, the lucky shoemaker was making a good living at his trade once again. One night, the shoemaker had an idea. He cut out the leather from some shoes and laid the pieces on his table as usual. Then he turned to his wife and said, "Suppose we were to stay awake all night instead of going to sleep. Who knows what we might see? Perhaps we would find out who comes every night to help me with my work." The shoemaker's wife agreed. She lit a candle and placed it on the table so they could see better. Then they hid in a dark corner of the shop. At midnight, 2 tiny elves appeared and climbed upon the shoemaker's table. They set to work at once, stitching and sewing, hammering and fitting. How their tiny fingers flew! The shoemaker and his wife could hardly believe their eyes. The elves worked quickly and quietly. They did not stop until they finished. When the last pair of shoes was done, the tiny visitors jumped down from the table and ran from the shop. The next morning, the shoemaker's wife said, "We must do something nice for the elves. Surely, if it were not for them, we would still be poor." "What do you have in mind?" asked the shoemaker. And his wife replied, "It is cold outside, and they should have warm clothing for the winter." Yeah, it's a coat. "I will knit them little shirts and trousers and coats and socks, and you can make them each a tiny pair of shoes." "Agreed," replied the shoemaker, and he and his wife set to work at once. By nightfall, they had finished everything. They laid each outfit on the work table. Then they hid themselves so they could watch their tiny visitors without being seen. At midnight, the elves appeared and went straight to the shoemaker's work table. Imagine their surprise when they saw what was there. Instead of piles of leather, there were tiny suits of clothes. They quickly put the clothes on. Each garment fit perfectly, and when they had slipped into their tiny new shoes, they began to sing, "Now that we are dressed so neat, why make shoes for others' feet?" Then they jumped down from the work table and danced all around the shoemaker's shop. Finally, when it seemed as if they could dance no more, they opened the door and skipped off down the street. The shoemaker smiled at his wife, and she smiled back at him, and then they went to bed. They never saw the elves again, but they had good luck for the rest of their days. The end.